And all of you guys have more than one black friend, but you can say conversation with my black friend if you want. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
If you can count how many people, how many black friends you got on your hand, I'm saying I'm playing.
You don't have, and you don't have enough. Your life is not well lived. How about that? I want to just say really quick, you guys. I had a thought yesterday. I shared this with you guys before we jumped on. That yesterday when I woke up, I saw all of the memes and the posts and the hashtags going around the Facebook universe, the Twitterverse, all that, and the hashtag stop anti-Asian hate. And obviously that woke me up, right? That was like, yeah, obviously, yeah, duh. This and today should not be the first time we've said it. It definitely shouldn't be the last time we say it. But for obvious reasons, because of the shooting in Atlanta, it's a louder call today. And so I was saying to you guys how I was gonna, put up my own stop anti-Asian hate post. And every time I would go to try to do it, I was like, I just don't feel like that's enough. I just don't feel like that's enough from me. I'm not judging anybody who put that up. I just was like, I just don't feel like that's enough for me. And I was sharing with you guys that my thought was, what would my Asian friends say if all I did was put up a stop anti-Asian hate post? Like, what would my Asian friends say if that's the measure of what I did? And I was like, I'm gonna have to think on this a little bit more because I just feel like there's more for me to do or more for me to say. And then it dawned on me, hey, wait, I have Asian friends. I have a good number of Asian friends. And so rather than put up a post, I want to see if my friends want to talk. Um, and so yesterday, and I said, I'll just stop in a minute, but yesterday, um, I sent a couple of text messages out. Aaron, I sent one to Aaron. And honestly, Aaron, you can test, all I said was hi. That's all I said was hi. Because I was like, I don't really have anything to say. I just want you to know I see you and I'm feeling it right now with you. And so this is kind of me saying hi to everybody and saying, is it okay if we talk about how y'all are doing or how y'all are feeling or anything else? And so that's what we're gonna do is just sort of talk together. So I'll just open the floor with the simple question of how are y'all doing in light of yesterday or in light of even this last year of things. How are y'all doing? Susan, I think we'll go to you first. I think we'll give you the deference that you deserve.
The old age deference. I'll take it. Yeah, it's been an intense couple months because I went on the 2021 Day of Remembrance, which is an annual Japanese American pilgrimage kind of experience, commemorating the World War II experience. And we went to the Puyallup Fairgrounds, which was Camp Harmony, a temporary camp for Seattle area Bainbridge Japanese Americans. So that started it, just sort of this raised awareness around the discrimination, the harassment of Japanese Americans. And then as the anti-Asian sentiments and actions have continued, that awareness was growing. And when I heard about the Atlanta shootings, I felt afraid. And I haven't felt afraid with other situations, but I felt afraid and like personally threatened and really conflicted. I was considering going to get a pedicure, and I have my Vietnamese salons that I to go to, and then I just thought, oh, but that's an easy target. And then I started berating myself, but they need the business, and so that's how I'm doing. Thank you. Would you like me to invite the next person? Is that how we want to do it?
Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. You can invite the next person. I think this group is pretty good at just picking it up where it gets put down. So,
But okay.
I was sharing before we went, as we were meeting everybody earlier today, just really feeling afraid for, I think, not just people of Asian descent, specifically though for the elders. Like, I know, especially when we know Seattle, right? Like, there are places specifically in Seattle, where the elderly are more like, hey, I want to take a walk. I want to go run this errand. I'm going to go with friends, or even go with grandchildren that are young. And just that, just being afraid for them getting hurt, being targeted, especially when they're going with little kids who can't really do a lot. Although there was an article about a San Francisco elderly woman who put a guy on a stretcher. So they will defend themselves, but the fact that you have to be even doing that when all you want to do is go pick up groceries, especially during COVID right now, like we're at home, we're isolated as it is, and taking those walks, picking up our groceries, those things are just the little bit of opportunity that people get to go outside, and we get to get fresh air. And for you to be afraid, for you to be afraid for the people you're with, that's not okay.
mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah.
I think the hardest thing right now, I'm okay. I'm used to this kind of behavior. It's nothing new, especially when you live in Oregon. Um, you just have to persevere through it. But I think the hardest part is talking to my teenage son about it. I had to wait for him to ask me what's really going on. Why are people being like this? I have tons of white friends. Are they going to attack me now? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, And yeah, we've been talking this morning, but I think he's still processing, and it's kind of worrisome for me for what's going to happen to the future. What's he going to do if I'm not around? I'm kind of protective of my child too. So
Yeah. What side of teenager? Like, is he a new teen or a?
14. I don't know what's that, mid-teen, I guess.
He's still early. He's still pretty early, but I think, I mean, you make a really good point. Like, not only are we living, are we living in this moment, but we have children that we're like you just said, Jeff, we're trying to explain something that we don't really understand, that we don't always understand, or we do understand, and we are trying to talk to our children about it in a way that is beneficial, but not scarring, right? Like we want to talk to our children with the truth, but we don't want to scar them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I know how that, I can imagine just what you're wrestling with. Hey, May, um, what else y'all feeling, or how y'all feeling? How you doing? I'll just say this while anybody else starts to unmute. Jefferson, about what you just said, like, I'm used to it. I hate that. As a Black woman, I hate that. Like, there is a part of this of racism, and there is a part of the feelings that it projects that you do get used to, and that's a horrible reality. That's a horrible thing. But it is what it is. It's horrible, but it is what it is. So, somebody else, how y'all doing?
Yeah, Michelle, I think it's hard to talk about feelings. I think the experiences, I would describe it as heavy.
Yeah.
As somebody who's Vietnamese, I feel particularly exposed because so many of our aunties and moms in the Vietnamese community serve in that industry at nail salons and spas. And so, yeah, I think in this process, it's the feeling, just, yeah, Susan, with your sentiment of the anxiety or the nervousness to go to a nail salon, I think there's a different type of exposure. And then I think along with that sadness, it's like communities of color and people of color are only ever listened to when our bodies are used for sport, like whether it's from the NBA to the NFL to the news media outlets. Our bodies are objects of spectacles and objects of entertainment and the like. And so I think all of that is just very, very heavy to sit in that. And then, yeah, sitting through COVID and then worrying about our elders and the vulnerable of our community, whether they're going to be attacked because they go to the grocery store, or if they catch COVID and the health complications and their sense of independence. There's just so much complexity in all of it. And so for it to come to a head again in tides, I think it's just heavy.
Yeah, heavy. That's a real emotion. Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. I think I've kind of oscillated between feeling an immense sense of numbness and kind of a similar vibe of this isn't anything new. Not much has really changed, and deep sadness and grief. And then from that extreme to the other extreme of just going like super angry and super like, really pissed off and wanting to like yell and break things. I think feeling all of those and packing that in an emotion, it's really hard to it's really hard to navigate and pinpoint, because you're just kind of bouncing around different feelings. And I know that a lot of the sentiment that a lot of folks have shared is immediately you just think about your older aging parents that can't do the things that that they should have the freedom to, and the fact that most of these places just across the country, not just over Atlanta and beyond, has been targeted specifically. And the Chinatowns and like the ethnic enclaves. My parents, they live, in a community that's predominantly Korean. And I think about where they go, they pretty much only go to the places where other Koreans are hanging out. They go to the H Mart, they go get groceries and whatnot. And you see, like, you just envision, a strip mall complex where all those things exist. And even those spaces are not safe, where the spaces where it's like, I can just be who I am, speak my own language, be around people who can see me and know me. Those are now no longer even safe now too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
it's almost like the place you go to be seen and to go, right? The place
right.
you go to be with your people, let's say, like, that's not safe because that place can be targeted because of that, as opposed to it being a safe place. Now it's like, it doesn't feel like a safe place because of
right.
what you said.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Louie, May, how y'all doing?
What's up? Yeah, I think I have just so many thoughts. I feel like so I'm Louie, and I'm a refugee, so that's my background. And so, growing up, my family, we were poor, like, the refugee immigrant household mentality. And so my parents were janitors, so we experienced a lot of like rejection, trying to assimilate. And so when I say like this sentiment isn't new, that it kind of goes back to all that history. And then just learning a lot of my history through working with Wing Luke Asia Museum, serving the community, just unpacking my own history. There's so much like richness there, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like in this moment, it reminds me of how like there's this constant like this othering, right? And I think Black and brown folks in general, we know what that othering feels like. We could be educated, we can climb the ladder, we can, be the sports star, we could achieve whatever America sets the bar for, but then you're just never, ever, ever gonna really fit in. You know what I'm saying? There's always gonna find that one excuse to make you feel like the other.
Yeah.
And I think we're in that time now, like where, you know, cameras are exposing what's always been there. So how I'm feeling right now, I mean, for the most part, relatively, you know, we're good and we're safe, but I also grew up hood too. So like, I mean, try me, bro. Like, try me. Like, I'm just saying, you come at my wife, like I'm going to jail. Like, I don't care. Like, that's really where I'm at. And I
Yeah.
think about my kids. I mean, like a while back, I seen a lady, a little Asian lady, get mugged, cause you know, down the street, and this reaction just came in. Like, I didn't even think about it. In hindsight, I'm like, damn, that was stupid. Like, my kids was in the car, and you know, whatever. But I just pulled over, you know, cause she was getting, he was snatching her chain or whatever. But just something like just made me react, and that's partly because of kind of how I grew up. So in this moment, like, yeah, we're okay, but I'm just thinking about, you know, our elders. And for Asian people, like, you don't F with our elders, bro. Like, you just don't.
Yeah.
You know, like, we have our own internal stuff, but like, I can talk about my mama, but you can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, straight up.
Yeah.
That's honestly where I'm at. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do if somebody comes at me with something like that. I really don't know.
Yeah. Well, we wish it not. We pray it not. I don't know, like, if you could see while you were talking, Louie, and May, I'll come back to you if you want to share, sis. But while you were talking about, you know, how y'all are serious about your elders, Susan's face was just beaming, like, with the truth of that. And as a non-Asian person, despite the fact that my name is Lang and I have been asked many times in my life, um, it's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to even see that expression. It's beautiful. May, how you feeling or thinking, sweetheart?
Yeah, I feel like I gotta keep it short because I've been really emotional the last, you know,
Yeah.
several days. Just as a Asian woman, being a woman, being Asian American, being Chinese American, you know, even the way that things started last year, my kids at a very great school was still getting made fun of about the coronavirus because he's Chinese. And so I have a lot of thoughts. I feel really torn. I feel really broken. There's a lot of intersectionalities that come at play also. And so sometimes I feel like, you know, here we are, you know, we're all about the struggle. I care very deeply about my Black and Brown communities. Um, and I feel like, though, when it comes to the Asian American community, the passivity is still very much there, even when voices are rising. And I feel like that's very hard for me as an Asian woman because I grew up on the other side. I am more vocal, I am more emotional. I'm an artist, so my stuff is out there. But when I see my community being really quiet, or I see white people being really quiet about it because Asians are going to be all right, they're all good, um, that's it's like tearing me up all over again.
Yeah.
And so finding that place for me is like, there's no, just like Louis said it, I feel like oftentimes I could feel nestled and be safe somewhere, but then something else is going to come up because it makes me feel like how I'm treated is I'm either, you know, exoticized in some way, shape, or form, or I'm submissive in some way, shape, or form. Or I'm just that secretary and people just want to hire me because I'm going to be folding church bulletins for them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other side of it is like, did you want to ask me anything else that I'm worth or who I am? Because you've never even given me the opportunity. But then if I do come out and say anything, then I'm just that loud Asian girl that doesn't know how to be put in her place.
I was just about to say, is there an equivalent to the angry Black woman for, like, what? It's the loud Asian girl. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. It's I mean, in Chinese, even with my parents, whenever we would go somewhere, they would tell me like, you can't be that right now. You need to chill.
Wow.
I can say something real quick too. It's kind of like,
See, I feel safe around the loud Asian girl, quite frankly. Like, seriously, like, I'm being honest with you guys. I trust the loud Asian girl. But that's just me. So
we have these gender assignments, right? It's like, hold up, is this Asian female talking back to me right now? And it's like they can't compute. They can't compute that we're speaking English, that we're on their level, and that we're mother freaking smarter than them. You know what I'm saying? and they can't accept that reality that they are not better than everybody. I'm talking to white people. Like, y'all ain't got it. You're not the one no more. Like, accept it. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead with your little flag and your little trucks or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's done, bro.
So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I'm gonna read a couple of thoughts that people are putting in the comments real quick. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they sort of hit me to this reality, I'll call it, of Asian silence, right? That the norm is, I think, kind of what you just said, May. Like the norm is just to take it, whatever the it is, and just keep pushing, keep doing life. Like even if it bothers you, obviously I can tell my brother Louie is pissed, but that there's sort of a norm of silence or just quiet among, I don't know, talk to me about that. And that's just one person who told that to me, so I'm not assuming it's true for everybody, but she just said culturally it's sort of a norm.
I'm sure everybody here has experienced some way, shape, or form. And if you're on here, it's because you have probably pushed the envelope in your community, whether it was in the Asian community or in a white setting or any kind of other setting. I would say very, very early on, I was very much taught that I don't have a voice. I love my parents. My mom is very expressive and she has grown a lot. But I was told many times that I just need to sit down, be quiet. I was not introduced at family gatherings, but my brother was. And I had to accept that. I've forgiven and I've had conversations about that. There's been reconciliation. But other than that, the way society kind of puts that label on me too, and things have happened, you know, in the last couple years where I voiced something and it was thrown back at my face because I apparently didn't have a place, and anything that I said was just emotionally driven. So there was no context to it. And so it's very hurtful, especially with that, what happened, right? Just, you know, with Atlanta, that's violence against women. It's sexism, it's misogynistic, there's male toxicity all around that. There's eroticism, it's everything, all that wrapped up. But then at the end of the day, who are those women's names? Who were they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
A lot of attention on the shooter's name and background and motivations and crap, but not on the women. Yeah. I'm curious how many of you heard the phrase in your growing up, the nail that sticks up will be pounded down. Yeah. That was very, very present in the Japanese American family and community. And that I think because of the World War II experience, that assimilation, fitting in, being a good citizen was the highest priority.
Wow, I've never heard that, but wow.
Yeah, I could jump in real quick on that. Is just kind of growing up, and I don't shame or fault my parents for this, because as I'm getting older, I have more language to understand it. But it was kind of like, don't upset white people, like that respectability politics of making sure. And it's kind of, Susan, what you're naming. And the reality is I think there was a season in my life as I got to like high school and college that I turned that towards them and was frustrated and angry and, you know, why are we being weak and all this kind of stuff. And in their minds are like, you don't understand that this is our way to survive. Like we're trying to survive. I don't speak the language here. I'm trying to just get what we can to put food on the table. So to survive in this system, essentially to assimilate, is that you don't rock the boat. You don't upset white people. And, you know, from that, it's, you know, it's framed in such a way that there's this, you know, that model minority stereotype that Asians fall in line. But really, it's just to maintain a status quo of white supremacy. Like, essentially, that's what it is. We won't call it that. We'll just call it like, y'all are doing a great job. You are a model citizen. You follow the rules. You respect authority. But what were those laws and what were the regulations and who did it benefit and who's profiting off of this system? It's basically saying, play by a rule that will continue to place white people in power and own everything. If you play by those rules, we just won't bother you. We won't eliminate you. We won't oppress you. We won't fill in the blank. But that in and of itself is its own form of oppression, self-hatred, you know, denial of self and all that. And, I think for Asian Americans, and I think I could just speak from my experience as being Korean American, is I've been recently reading Kathy Park Hong's book, Minor Feelings, which is really, really powerful book. But one thing that she says in her book that just stood out to me was, as Asian Americans, and she would say even as people of color, we've always defined our identity by what we are not, centering whiteness in the middle. Like, we are not this, we are not that, to make sure that everybody else, white people, feel okay and safe and comfortable around us. And that's just the truth. That's like the water that we swim in. It's the air that we breathe. And, if we don't speak up, if we don't kind of buck that system, then it just continues to go. That it just continues and it continues and continues.
Yeah, I don't want to overshadow that, but I think that is true for women as well. Kicking back to what May was talking about, a lot of women are raised with just don't upset men, right? Just don't cause temptation for men, don't upset men. Whatever you do, you can be free, or you can be, you can be yourself, as long as it does not intrude on whatever it takes for a man to be a man, whatever that may mean. So all of that. I'm gonna just read a couple of things in the chat and we'll keep talking. Felice said she was raised with the notion that children are seen and not heard. That's what she heard growing up. So I think it's the same. It's some of the same sentiment that you were talking about. Some people were really shocked by the quote you gave us, Susan, about what did you say? The nail that sticks up gets. Can you say it again?
The nail that sticks up will be pounded down.
Be pounded down.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Latricia and Felice were both saying these racist ways and these ways that racism is affecting our community. Essentially, we just have to stop this. Felice said, you never get used to it when it's in your face every day, which other people would say differently. Some people say it's in your face every day and you totally get used to it. And she said, when you're reminded of the hate that people have for you just because of the color of your skin or your nationality, she said, this is not what Jesus had in mind at all. So yeah, I don't, and then Latricia, excuse me, said, the water that we swim in, that's a deep idea. It's just the water that we swim in. Let me ask a couple of questions. Anybody have anything they want to say before I pose some questions? Some people would say, what we're dealing with right now, and I would say like in the last year and in the last day, is not the same as Black Lives Matter. And some people would say, yes, it is the same. How would you guys sort of speak into that? How is this sort of the same as or different from causes like Black Lives Matter? And I'm not talking about the organization, no matter where you find yourself on the spectrum with that, but just the cause of Black Lives Matter, especially in the last year. How would you guys talk about like, this is the same, or this is not, or this is different? How would y'all sort of, what are your thoughts on that? Hey, May, if you want to jump in this conversation, let me know. I'll send you the link. Sorry, I'm looking at two screens. that was very, sorry. Anyway, yeah, you guys have any thoughts about that?
I think for me personally, I think everybody has, their own experiences with it. I think personally for me, I think it's both and. In many ways, I think it's both and, because we have to understand when the struggle happened, where Black and brown folks came, and all the systemic stuff, all the white supremacy, how that all started, paved the way for Asian Americans in America to really, there's like so much groundwork, right? My mom always says, like, there's somebody who has to break the current for the salmon to swim up the stream. And those people, we got to recognize who those people are first. So without recognizing those people, then we don't know where else we're going to march. But I will say, like, the other part of it is the same, because we are still, there's still white supremacy over us. We're still not good enough. The system still is worked against us, even monetarily. Maybe we like have more opportunities or whatnot, whatever statistic says, but those statistics are also very wrong. But again, those are all systemic societal stereotypes that are plagued to create divisiveness even within the Black and Brown and Asian American communities. And so I think that there's a lot of compounding like intersectionalities with that I feel like we can totally unpack for
Yeah.
another hour long conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'll just comment real quick. And so I think, you know, pain is pain and trauma is trauma. And so because I work with, you know, very diverse populations in my work and then just my background, I feel like we have to have, as a Southeast Asian person, um, you know, there are definitely intersectionalities where the struggle is real and we can relate on that. But at the same time, there are differences and we have to honor those differences. And so that's why it's natural for me to go to a protest for Black Lives Matters, because I understand the pain, I understand the struggle. I will never ever walk in a Black person's shoes. I will never know exactly what it feels like to be in a Black person's skin. And so I don't want to assume that it's exactly the same, and I guarantee you it's not. You know what I'm saying? And so the experiences are different, but there are moments where we do there's a shared struggle, and so there's that too. So as my wife is saying, it's both and. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just to add a little bit to that, so I was having a conversation with a friend about just again they were kind of checking in, and to me I feel like knowing racism, the history of racism, and I know someone had mentioned earlier, you know, Asians being the model minority, but clearly even if you are the model, quote unquote model minority, like still being targeted, right? Like still facing racism, it's still real. And especially with racism, there's our Native American brothers and sisters, and there's our African American brothers and sisters as well, who have this country really, specifically to African American, this country being built on just literally being brought over and having them do the slave work that was happening, and then still how we see how years later they're still systematically being pulled down. Same thing for Asian Latinos. Like there really is no model minority there, and really it's about us getting together and saying, hey, this isn't okay. I don't care if they're Native American, Black, Latinos, Asians, like you cannot do this. You are not allowed to do this. And for all of us to get together and say, we're not going to accept this. I had told my kids earlier to come and listen to a little bit, and so they're listening in, but they're over a little further. But I'm raising, you know, I'm Nicaraguan and Chinese, but they're Black and Native as well. So knowing that when they come out in society, one of my kids look Latino and the other one looks Black. You can tell they're brothers, but I know that regardless, when Latinos are being targeted, when Asians are being targeted, my kids are going to get targeted, you know? And so it's important for us to, as society now, we may not see it in our lifetime, but hopefully the work that we do and the work that we do in solidarity is for our kids and for grandkids, right? But we need to have these conversations now. And so that's why I was saying, you know, thank you, Ms. Michelle, for bringing us together and for everyone who's here. Because if we don't have the conversations, if we don't start putting things out on the table, then no one has them. And then it seems like it's okay when it's not okay at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just real quick, Michelle, I appreciate the question because a lot of folks, I've had conversations about this. How does this relate to? How's it similar? How's it different than Black Lives Matter? And I just echo and agree with what May and Louie said. There's a both and space to it. So I think for me, metaphors and images and analogies help. So if this helps, if it doesn't, you know, I don't want it to, you know, offend anybody or anything like that. But if I have this picture in this where that question is important to unpack the nuances of it, but it's not the right question that we should be asking. If if you had two children and they were getting bullied at school, and the kids came to the parents, and one of the kids said, I got a black eye from this bully, and the other kid said, like, I got a fat lip from this bully, and then the parents come home and they're fighting over whose pain was more, and they said, what's going on? Why are y'all fighting? It's like, well, I got the worst because I got the black eye. It's like, no, but my lip hurts more. The parent would say, who the hell hit you? The important thing is who's hurting you?
Yeah.
And the reality is the kids would be like, oh, it's Jimmy down the street. It's the same. Like, why are we not focusing on Jimmy who's hitting people versus like who's got a worse pain? Now, I understand that it's nuances and it's different, and I don't want to get into the game of the oppression Olympics. It's not about that, but the culprit of it, and it's the who's doing the beating is not being talked about enough. And so again, it's not to just completely squash and stop the conversation. It needs to be had because there's deep history and intricacies between, Black and Asian communities as well. That stuff needs to be talked about. That stuff needs to be named. Again, separate from the conversation, what brought us here tonight, post Atlanta, but that should be kind of always on the forefront for us. Is a black eye worse than a bloody lip? No. Who's hitting you? That's my question. Is who's hitting you?
Yeah, I can't high five you enough on that, and thank you for that detour of thought, because last year when we were in the height, and I hate to even say it that way, like it was a trend or whatever of the George Floyd and the protests and all that stuff. I said, there's a whole lot of talk about oppression. I was like, can we talk for a minute though about the oppressor, because oppression does not exist without an oppressor. Like, let's stop talking about oppression as if it exists by itself, and it's just sort of this energy that exists and doesn't come from somewhere. It comes from somewhere, and we can't keep acting like it doesn't, especially those who are related by blood or by culture, however you want to say it. Those are who are related to a legacy of oppression. They absolutely have to stop acting like oppression just happens out of nowhere. Like, there is a source for that oppression. And I agree with you. And I appreciate you changing the question, Aaron. I don't think my question is a wrong question, but I think your question is a better question. So, and for those who maybe are just tuning in, my question was, is Black Lives Matter the same or different from Stop Asian Hate? And Aaron said there's a different question to consider, which if you're here now, you probably heard it. So thank you for the redirection. I truly appreciate that. Tony, what's up?
Yeah, if I could, I'd love to also further reinforce what Aaron said. I think, Michelle, when you ask that question, it's from a place of solidarity. But when that question is asked by the wrong person in the wrong hands, what actually happens is it reinforces anti-Blackness. So when it is the white supremacy that Asian American people experience or Asian people experience the same as the white supremacy that Black people experience, that only pits the two communities together, and then the actual work can't be done, and the people who benefit from white supremacy continue to benefit. I think in that question, because what we find is with the Asian American community, it's so complex because we're not just Asian, but we're Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. And so our experience within our own ethnic communities very much differ from one another. But because we're all labeled Asian American, our shared experience in some ways is a shared experience as a result of white supremacy and oppression. A lot of our experiences as refugees or children of refugees, those shared experiences are a part of the problem of white supremacy and oppression. And so then the fine line and the hard work of how do we navigate that and discover who we are when our identity is so entangled with this messiness is so difficult. And so it's far easier to ask the question, is Black Lives Matter the same as Stop Asian Hate? And I think for us, we have to go back to Dr. King's vision. It's oppression anywhere is oppression everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not a competition. The liberation of one people leads to the liberation of others. And so, yeah, I think I only want to amen what Aaron said and to reinforce that. Any sentiment that says, well, Black Lives Matter is different or antithetical to what Asians experience is only reinforcing anti-Blackness. And Asians benefit a lot from anti-Blackness rhetoric because we're white passing. We can opt in and out of that model minority myth. We can opt in and out of that white privilege. And I think it's also difficult being Vietnamese American because out of all the other Asian ethnicities, the Vietnamese American community, for some reason, and we know the reasons, are just very vocal about their support of rhetoric and policies that actually endanger and harm our very own community. The Vietnamese community in particular.
Wait, say it again. What?
Okay, I'm just gonna shoot it straight. The Vietnamese community really loves a former president and the Chinese virus language because the Vietnamese community has a blood feud with our particular country and a particular people group. And so the complexity of that is to say, man, my experience as an Asian American and as a Vietnamese American, though there may be similarities with Korean brothers and sisters and Chinese brothers and sisters and Japanese brothers and sisters and Filipino brothers and sisters, are vastly different and complex. And it's white supremacy that says it's all the same because all lives matter or all Asians matter. And so when Louie says, man, me and my elders, we have issues, but don't come for them, I'm all about that because it's true. We have generational trauma that I got to figure out, but that doesn't mean you can beat up my grandma. Like it's just as simple as that. So,
yeah.
I have a question. I'm wondering if this is a generational thing. I was not taught the concept of solidarity. That was not a value that was taught to me when I was growing up. And it's something that I'm very much coming to now, but it was absent when I was growing up.
So Susan, you're Japanese?
Japanese American, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Third generation. And I feel like that was a loss. I think I got a little bit of a sense of solidarity with other Asian groups in the US, but not across racial lines.
I'll let somebody, I don't have an answer for you. I'll let somebody.
I'm curious to see if how that was communicated or not.
I like I said, I'm Nicaraguan and Chinese, so it wasn't an option. Like I have to identify with both groups. And then I grew up in the Central District. So then I have a lot of family members that are Black. And so just me, myself being curious and exploring my own culture, you know, I had to do research on my Asian side. Up until high school, I was Cindy Sandino. And then when I got to high school, I was like, you know what? I'm Cindy Sandino-Chang. Like I'm identifying and I'm claiming both. So to me, I don't know if that's generational or a mix between generational and because of my cultural mix. I felt like I had to do that to represent myself.
Here's the thing about your question, Susan. Like, because I don't know if as a Black woman, if I was taught solidarity as much as I just feel like it was either modeled. You know what I'm saying? It was just sort of modeled, I think. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I feel like I was taught it, but I don't feel like I was taught it in words. I feel like I was somehow supposed to receive messages about solidarity.
Well, I'm very much a baby boomer, post World War II baby. That the model minority train was in full steam.
Yeah.
So the values were about assimilation and survival and fitting in and not being incarcerated again. That was what was moving the train.
Can somebody talk about, or a couple of you guys talk about, I don't want to leave it to chance that people know what y'all are talking about when you talk about model minority. Like I said before we first jumped on this Zoom, I was like, I got a lot of Asian friends and I got a lot of Black friends, obviously. And I don't necessarily think all or even the majority of my Black friends know some of these terms or know some of the realities that I've come to learn over time. But so I don't want to take it for granted that people know what y'all are talking about when you say the model minority myth. What is that?
I would say it, but I've already talked, so I'm sure other people can.
May, welcome.
Oh, hello, everyone. I mean, I feel like, you know, there's a lot of scholars and books and people that can probably say it more eloquently than I can, but I mean, I definitely grew up with a sense of at least an idea of the model minority, the kind of the story being that Asian Americans are just inherently, they're the minority that's doing it right. And in that, we have been pitted against other groups, particularly the Black community. And there's so many articles and things I can talk about the history of how that became constructed. But I think it's been interesting, like we were talking about kind of, or Tony, you mentioned like white passingness. And what I think is really fascinating about model minority and white passingness is that at a certain point you do hit the ceiling, like there's only so far you can go. And I think what we're seeing both with what happened in Atlanta and what's happening in the past year is that eventually like it only gets you so far and like white supremacy will come for you. So there's only, I think I actually heard someone else, I think it might have been like a call, I think it was Brandy Miller and Sean Michael Watkins were talking about this earlier today. But yeah, it's basically the word myth is attached to model minority to denote the fact that it's a false narrative. It's not actually true, but it's used both to keep Asian Americans to feel like, oh, we have a place and we can work our way up to whiteness, which is seen as at the top, and that's why it's right. And or, you know, we can use that, or it becomes a tool used against other people of color. So I don't know, other people can talk, but that's my 2 cents. Hi everyone, nice to meet you.
Hi.
Is that anybody else have thoughts on just that phrase, that term?
Yeah, I'll go because I gotta leave soon. I mean, I didn't really hear about it till I was working with the city of Beaverton, and everyone was educating me about it, and it pissed me off when I read it because it says like, "Oh, we come from a nice, stable home, rich family." Where I'm like, I my parents came here as immigrants. We were poor, you know. Michelle knows some of my story. I hustled to survive on the streets, you know. So none of this is true. I am self-made. You know, we own our own business, but that's when things change, right? When you own your own business, the policeman that arrested me back in the day for no reason shook my hand and said, "Thank you for your tax dollars." That was like a whole shift. And so I was like, so unless I am legally in power, you will always see me as someone else. And if I am not in your lane, I am not worthy to be in this country. And it's never ever changed, right? You get the look. And I think everyone here knows the look. You don't even have to say a word. You walk by and their eyes are just looking at you for no reason. And you're like, what did I do? My wife always says it. Is there something on my face? I'm like, no. You know, it's just, they give you that look. And especially now when you're wearing a mask, all they do is give you looks like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You came to H Mart. This is the Asian store. What are you looking at me for, right? I can go all crazy. Lou, I see Lou smiling that you're gonna make me go all hood. But anyway,
I think you two are gonna connect. I think you two are gonna connect after this is over.
But yeah, it is. It's hard to see, but it all starts from the gold rush days, right? When they told us that a bunch of men came in and we want some food. We made some chop suey, And we're like, bam, we didn't tell them that was just a bunch of junk. We just said, yeah, this is great. And they thought it was great, right? And they got suckered. But then that helped us to immigrate more people in, right? We all own restaurants and we played the game. We played their game and they got mad because of our grit. Our grit is what helped us to form where we are now. And I think now they're getting mad. They're like, okay, they know how to play us.
Yeah.
If I mean, if you really think about it, most Asians own a lot of property in America, but nobody knows that until like they get hurt or something happens and like, oh, we didn't know he was a millionaire. We didn't know he was this and that. And then things get out of proportion. So yeah, it's a frustrating thing to hear what a model minority is, but that's just what they want everyone to be like.
What I hear from you guys, and Jefferson, hold on, I know you got to go in a little bit, but hold on just a sec. What I hear from you guys is the model minority myth is as oppressive as I don't really have an equal variant, but is as oppressive as the idea of, say, Black on Black crime. Like this idea that I'm supposed to live into or rise above something, right? It's like some people might say the model minority sounds like a positive, affirming phrase. It sounds like a positive thing to, I don't know, live into. But what I'm hearing from you guys and what I've heard from other people is it's not. It's actually just as oppressive. And to your point, May, when you said, you know, try to be as much like white as you can. But then you said, but sooner or later, white supremacy is coming for you too. No matter how much you can ascend to whatever, you know, ascend up this horrible ladder of supremacy, at some point, white supremacy is coming for you too. And so this idea of being a model minority, it has a hole in it as well.
Yeah. It allows it. I think it allows white people and white power structures to do shortcuts. So if you're Asian American, then you're good in math. You know, if you're Asian American, you're hardworking. You never get in trouble with the law. You know, that for me as an Asian American woman, I'm very creative, and you just think, what? Where'd you get that? And it allows these snap shortcuts that may not fit, but it's convenient.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just on that, I think the where it's problematic is, again, you have the word minor, right? It's all in language. Like you're never gonna be you're never gonna be there. Whatever the goal is, you're always gonna be minor, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like it coincides with the word model citizen, right? You want to be a model citizen, you should be a model minority. But then what happens in that, there's a negative effect where, I'd imagine Black and brown folks can feel like it's kind of like the little brother and the older brother, whatever, right? It's like that's the model child. And so for Black and brown folks, they could be like, oh, I'm not good enough because they're saying the Asians are the model. And so it has this negative kind of tone to it. And if we're not careful, I mean, and this is only because I talk to a lot of like Black and brown kids, in our programs and stuff. It's like, yeah, like we ain't trying to be like you. Like we are our own people.
Right.
Why can't it just be that? There is no hierarchy here. And so what it happens is that language reinforces this structure, this hierarchy structure, right? Which is built on white supremacy. And they get to set the standard. You know what I'm saying? So again, a lot of Asians I know personally have lived into that narrative. It's like, yeah, pull yourselves up by the bootstrap. It's like they inherit this white language because they want to fit in. You know what I'm saying? They want to have the access. But then again, I'm just telling you, you can get to that point. You're always going to be seen as the other. That side look says way more than everything that's come out their mouth and how they treat you. So, and I'm not saying that because I balance that with a sense of contentment in my life. Like I don't need to get all that. I don't need to have material possessions to be content. Whatever the expectation is, like I don't live for that anymore. You know what I'm saying? However, if all that was socially gone, right? I feel like mentally and spiritually and emotionally, the Asian community would be a lot better off. Everybody would be a lot better off
Right.
without
You
them.
just said something that's so powerful. You just said something that's so powerful, Louis. You said you've been conditioned by white language. I think that's how you said it.
Yeah.
Like you have to be careful not to be conditioned by white language. And I know a lot of white folks who are like, all right, can we get off of this now? And the truth of the matter is, we haven't been talking about it long enough. Like we haven't been talking about the I don't know, in my mind it looks like a lasso, the lasso of white language, white supremacy that that, like you said, Jefferson, if you're not careful, or May, it'll get you. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself caught by this white language, white supremacy, white culture, if there be such a thing. And you're like, I don't know how I started thinking like that. And it just sort of these messages just get downloaded until you just accept them, until you just receive them. So
Well, I mean, I'll be more straight up. I've even heard like some Asian kids be like, well, at least I ain't black. You know what I mean? Like there's that thought. It's like, I know I got it bad, but at least I ain't black. You know what I'm saying? So it creates this division even within ethnic kind of makeups of our societies, right? So it creates division, right?
Yeah. Thank you for being honest about that.
I think our country's language around majority, I haven't used the word majority, but minority, and that the reality for some white people is that they're looking around and saying, hey, wait, people that I thought were supposed to be the minority, it's like getting to be 50-50, and I don't like this. And I think some of the pushback and violence against people of color is because white people are feeling threatened.
For sure. I don't think it can be said any plainer than that, Susan. Let me ask a couple of questions. Let me read a couple of comments from the chat. And then I have one more question that might be a little triggering, but I think we can handle it. So let me just go through the chat really quick. Some people said the model minority supports or it qualifies the idea of microaggressions. Somebody else said white supremacists are just looking for scapegoats as to their own behavior, essentially. Steve Polson is asking the question, what can we do to support our Asian brothers and sisters? What are some do's? What are some don'ts? We can chew on that in a minute.
Is Steve white?
Steve is Samoan and Filipino. Steve, what are you? I hate to say it. I hate to say that. Steve is a lot of things. Steve, put it in the chat what you are, brother. He's a dope dude. I know that.
I'll talk to Steve. I'll talk to Steve right now. We're doing it, bro. This is how we do it. We talk about it. We unpack it. It gets messy. We get dirty with it. We're doing it. So this is one example of how we make it better. You feel me?
There it is. There it is. Steve is Chamorro. That's what.
He's Cham? Oh, he's Cham?
Huh?
Oh, he's Cham?
Yeah, I think so. Steve is all the world. Pat Thompson said, you're all the world, Steve. Thank you. You're right, Lou. I think this is work. I think this is part of the work. And I think if we could even have more of these conversations where people don't agree and they would be willing to say, I don't agree. But I'm willing to show up. I'm willing to show up because I want to hear what I don't agree. Because maybe I don't agree because I just been taught different. And maybe what I was taught was wrong. And I need to work through that. I'm not going to be able to get through what people typed fast enough. But if anybody has any other question or sentiment that they want to express, put it back in the chat and I'll come back. Chamorro is from Guam. So here's the question I had that I feel like might be a little triggering. For the last year, we have heard the phrases, the kung, I've never said it, so I don't even know how to say it. The kung flu? Is that what it's been said? So we've heard that word. We've heard that, the pandemic is completely China's fault and Asian people's fault. And that aggression towards that, or aggression pointed in that direction is justified. I'll be honest, I don't know. If I were Asian, I don't know how I would not wild out on somebody if they said that to me to my face, or if I even had a hint that they thought that way about me or my people or whatever. Regardless of where the pandemic originated, at some point it's an international problem that we just all have to address. But my question is just sort of, how has it been for y'all? How has that been for y'all to hear? I mean, we've literally heard those types of phrases and sentiments on news, on the new, like on credited television and radio. We've actually heard phrases that I would think we would never hear out loud, and we've heard it for a year. How do y'all reckon with that, or just talk to us about that?
I'm waiting for Louie to point out where the fire is, and I'll follow his lead, because I think Asian people have been domesticated. We've been conditioned to be grateful that at least it's not the N word.
Wow.
And so, like, Kung Fu has a nice ring to it. It's funny, right? It's a joke. And so I think we've been domesticated and conditioned to pit. It's that comparison game, because Michelle, earlier you're trying to say, man, what is similar? Is there something comparable within the Black community and Black culture that can be comparable to the model Asian model minority myth? But I think that's the thing. That's a part of the system and the structure. It's like there isn't anything the same. But that's because we all experience being objectified differently. But at the end of the day, we're all objectified. And so I think
my heart, can I just be honest with you, Tony? I have not recovered from what you just said a minute ago. I have, like, at least it's not the N word. I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm not a cussing woman, but man.
Well,
some kind of, that's like effed up. That's right.
It is, isn't it? Because that's what Louie was saying when he said Asian kids are now growing up saying, well, at least I'm not Black. I have it bad, but at least I'm not Black. And that's how whiteness works, and it reinforces anti-Blackness. So the hatred and the violence and the oppression that the Asian American community experiences may be different than the Black community, but we can't separate Black Lives Matter from Stop Asian Hate. They don't have to be the same, but they can't be separated.
So detour for a second. How, I spent a lot of time this last year talking to white people about talking to other white people about their ish, right? So now I'm feeling, I'm having a detour thought, like, so how do I say, so how are y'all talking to your people about that sentiment you just, are y'all talking to your folks?
We have to, and it's a big blind spot in the Asian American community. White supremacy already has a stacked team, and then now they're pulling out the reserves, and they're also using the Asian American community to do their dirty work. And so the Asian community needs to interrogate and confront its own prejudice and its own anti-Black sentiments and culture and systems and structures. And it's only then can the oppression that the Asian American community experiences begin to also dissolve. It goes hand in hand.
Okay. My God. Okay. Other thoughts about the language that has been used just over this last year, or anything? We probably have about 5 minutes left, so I don't want to command what you discuss. So however you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's just stupid, ignorant. It's like blanketing everybody, and we all know that's comes out of ignorance. And anybody that kind of has a pushback against that It's just they want to stay in the ignorance. And this is call it what it is. You don't want to change. You don't want to grow. You just want to like peddle whatever it is that makes you feel happy. And it's a self-centered way of living. And which is classic Western Eurocentric mentality, right? It's like all about me, my property line, my house, my plate, my food, my space. You know what I mean? Like it's an individual kind of way to just think about, oh, everybody else's problem is their problems, and if as long as if it affects me, I'm gonna blame that on everybody else too.
Yeah.
That's, you know what I'm saying? And so again, and to answer the other question about kind of talking to Asian people about it, like I do talk about, you know, I guess for me it's just like there are white passing Asians that I challenge on a regular basis. People in my family, and we have these discussions around white privilege, systemic racism, Black Lives Matters. There's people. I mean, we I'm fine with the uncomfortable conversation. You know what I'm saying? And so again, they're still going to be my family. We're still going to be friends. At the same time, it's like, but you know, the internet and has social media has really allowed people to be like keyboard warriors. You know what I'm saying? They could pop off, but I know they wouldn't say the same thing if we were in front of them. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality.
Yeah.
So that's what I gotta say about it. They can say kung flu all they want on TV or whatever, but I know they'll think twice if they're in front of me, straight up.
Susan.
My ears are so used to kind of Asian, twisted Asian references, you know, what like chop suey or one that was when I was growing up was ching chong Chinaman. Ah, so, you know, you just hear that crap all the time with each new immigrant group. There's some kind of a slur that's in the air. And so when it was kung flu, you know, it just sort of just went by my ears.
I'll just add that I think someone mentioned this right when I was logging onto Facebook and saw this conversation was happening. I think the response in myself has been that like put your head down and just like move forward, kind of like the coping mechanism. You have like two options. One is like fight or one is flight or whatever. Like something like I think the cultural response of like, if I just put my head down and keep working, maybe it will go away. Or like I'll just like, if I can work harder, that they won't say these things anymore. And that kind of continues to feed into that lie. And I'm just like, I think something I want to say, Michelle, which I typed in the chat and then you invited me onto this, was just how grateful I am that you're making this space. And just to name and call out that there have been Black leaders in the last couple of days who have really invested their time and resources and space and voice to sit with us in this and to say you're not alone. Like we see you and we know what this feels like. And I feel really hopeful that we don't have to buy into the lie of white supremacy anymore, that we can actually turn towards each other in this, even if the experience is not the same, to say, we don't need to buy into that anymore. Like we don't need to have white supremacy tell us if we're okay or not to be in this country or to exist or live. So anyways, all that to say, I'm just really grateful, Michelle, just for your leadership and grace to hold the space with us. It really means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a privilege, it's an honor for me to be able to call us together. You know, months ago, when I did the chat with white folks, right, back in, I think, March of 2020, I realized that I wanted to have a chat because I was so angry. I was so angry and I was so pissed. And I felt like the hashtags and the posts were not enough. And I was like, no, we need to have a real serious, like you said, Louie, dirty, messy, I'm not apologizing for nothing conversation. And when I wanted to have us come together to talk today, I realized that I was not motivated by anger. I was motivated by what you said, May, by empathy. And empathy that was like, I'm sorry, you guys. Ain't nothing I can do to fix what happened in Atlanta or the slurs that you've endured over the last year. I just want to say I understand and I feel it. I know what this feels like. And my motivation right now is, like you said, just to give you space to breathe it out. But it wasn't because of anger. It was really just like, this is jacked up, and we're gonna have to keep coming to the table until until it's a better table. We're gonna have to keep coming to this table. And so to me, it was I'm thankful that you guys said, yeah, let's talk. So I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Anything else before we start to jump off? There's a couple of thoughts in the chat.
I think I just want to say, yeah, I appreciate you too, Michelle. I've been knowing you since the Langston Hughes Summer Musical. I love your heart. And so, I mean, everybody loves you because of your actions and how you live your life. So I have personally benefited from the way you live your life. And then I would also say a lot of us Asians, people of color, BIPOC, we benefit from the Black struggle, like straight up. I love Black music. I love hip hop culture. You know, that I love Black culture and the Black struggle, the Black victories. I know it's an ongoing fight, but because y'all are fighting, it allows us to stay in the fight too. So I'm just all about promoting unity, because I think the real enemy is racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. That is the real enemy, straight up.
Yeah. And you know what? I appreciate rather that you said that, Louie, because I feel like a lot of times, if you know me, you know I'm a Christian, you know I'm a Jesus follower. And I feel like a lot of times Jesus followers say the enemy is evil and sin and all that. And I feel like, true that, but that's a scapegoat. When you put it that way, you're escaping the work. You're escaping the work. And the work is racism. The work is supremacy. The work is respect of culture and all the other, respect of women, respect of all of it. Like to just put a pin in it and say that's sin or that's evil. You're basically saying there's nothing you can do about it. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think we got it there. Not only is there something we can do about it, there's something that we must do about it.
I'm inspired by that because, you know, the Bible talks about all creation. We are all image bearers. We're all created equal. With that, you know, God created every single one of us. And so specifically Christians, white evangelicals, y'all better figure this out. You need to figure this out because the church is being exposed right now.
Yeah.
Whatever y'all preaching and teaching, we ain't seeing it. So wake the F up.
Yeah. In Jesus' name. Let me just read a couple of comments as we close out. So Robin says, honestly, she's saddened that the Asian community hasn't made the same strides in approaching the Black community about what we've been through. So a little bit of a call out, but I think it's honest. I think it's fair. Sandy says she's appreciative of this conversation and targeting something beyond ugly, that we all are a part of the change. Andrew, Louie, somebody said preach. Like y'all gotta be careful when you tell Louie to preach, because you see he'll drop some bombs on you. He'll drop some F-bombs on you. So
I'll pray for you after.
You still make it in. Jay Raymond said he appreciates all of you for supporting each other and having this chat. Thank you for your bravery. Jay Raymond is quite cute, can I add? But we'll talk about that later. That's all. So again, there's others. Felice said high five to everybody. If there's anything I'm missing, you guys in the chat, I apologize. I can only go so fast. But just a lot of appreciation for us having this chat. I honestly, I do think a Black and Asian chat needs to happen, like a larger one. And I'll say this, I'm a documentary, watcher. And I watched the documentary about the 1992 Rodney King riots and how much of the rift between the Black community and the Asian community, generally speaking, was on display in that riot. And I thought, you know what, there needs to be a conversation, not about that, but about the fallout or the soot, the consequence that we live in now. I don't think it's gone away. So maybe we'll take another step and have another conversation. Anybody have any closing thoughts before we check out?
Your actions are building solidarity, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Michelle. Really appreciate you.
Welcome. You know, can I just say this real quick? You know, for all of us, I don't want to say this. I'm saying this as humbly as I can try to be, I guess. I have a lot of friends from different cultures and different races because of years of this, right? And I feel like some people right now just want to have relationships with people, and I'm like, that takes time. Like that takes a lot of showing up. That takes a lot of showing up, not just in moments of crisis, but period, just across the board. It takes a lot of showing up. And so if there's one thing I can say we all need to be doing right now, is showing up. How do I say it? Showing up and continuing to show up when there's not a crisis, right? Continuing to show up for each other when it's not all hands on deck, when we're at the barbecue, still show up, so that when we're in the fire, like I know who I can turn to, I know where I can look and talk in the fire. And that work takes time. That work takes a lot of time.